manufacturer, the exporter, trader, the laboratory personnel, or the technician. We are all consumers, and all we need to look for is safety, quality, and value for money for the products and services we avail. To learn more about the Philippine Accreditation Bureau, visit us at www.pabaccreditation.dti.gov.ph.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our awareness webinar on the National Quality Infrastructure for PAB Council
Recording in
members
progress.
and other concerned government agencies. I am Rose Bonto from the Technological Services Division of DOST-ITDI, and I will be one of your hosts for this momentous event.
As consumers, when we buy something, we want to get what we pay for. And as business owners, we want our products or services to go global and be internationally competitive. What if I told you there's such a system that can give us that? Good afternoon. I am your co-host, Michael Jason Solis. Join us in the next few hours to know more about the National Quality Infrastructure, or NQI. To formally start our webinar, I would like to ask everyone to please stand and join us in prayer, followed by the singing of the national anthem.
All right, everyone, you may now take your seats. Okay, so here's a quick reminder for our webinar rules. Okay, so for our Zoom participants, so please rename your Zoom accounts to this prescribed format. So write your agency or office and then your full name for us to easily identify you. And then stay muted while the presentations are ongoing. So this is to avoid any background noise and interruptions to our speakers and other listeners and participants. Kindly check your internet connection from time to time to be able to watch the webinar smoothly and avoid any interruptions. If you get disconnected, just reconnect and join in again. So for any questions po that you would like to raise, please type it in the chat box. Our Zoom chat moderator will collect it and will be answered by our speakers after all the presentations are finished. If you have any technical issues or comments, you may also use the chat box to prompt our technical crew and address your concerns immediately. So the webinar is being recorded and streamed live on our Facebook page, DOST-ITDI Updates.
As you know, this webinar was suggested by Undersecretary Rowena Cristina Guevara of the Department of Science and Technology during the 14th Philippine Accreditation Bureau Council meeting for government agencies to have a common understanding of the NQI. Free government offices are engaged in NQI-related activities and pursuing the enactment of proposed NQI-related bills into law. These are the Department of Trade and Industry through the Bureau of Philippine Standards and Competitiveness Bureau, the Department of Science and Technology through its National Metrology Laboratory under the Industrial Technology Development Institute and the Development Academy of the Philippines. Later, we will be provided with updates on NQI initiatives from these three organizations.
Yes, and also, may I also remind our Facebook viewers, okay, so the link is on the Zoom chat box, so go ahead and share it now. So if you are not yet registered, so just wait for the evaluation form that we will be flashing later on. So that would be also your attendance for this webinar. So for those watching on Facebook, so please join our discussions by posting your comments or questions at the comment section later. So currently we have 99 participants in Zoom and we have 109 Facebook viewers watching us now live. So by the way, to all our participants, both in Zoom and in Facebook, so we will be giving the certificate of participation later. So the link will be posted at the end of the session and will be accessible until 6 p.m. today. So we adhere to the Data Privacy Act of 2012 or the RA 10173. So we strictly implement appropriate security measures and treat all the information we collected from you from this webinar with utmost confidentiality. Okay. So yes, Sir Micol, let us now acknowledge our participants. So we have a lot of participants today. So of course, we have with us our dear Secretary, Fortunato T. de la Peña. Good afternoon, sir. Our DOST officials led by Dr. Renato Solidum Jr. and Dr. Diane Ignacio. Good afternoon, sir and ma'am. We also have our beloved director, Dr. Annabel V. Briones, and ITDI staff. So other DOST agencies, regional and provincial offices, And we also have from DTI, so the Undersecretary, Rafaelita Aldaba, is also with us, and she is one of our guest speakers later. And for today's session, so we will also have from DTI Bureau of Philippine Standards, from PAB, and Phil MSTQ.
That's right, Rose. And we also have guests from the DTI's Board of Investments, regional offices, and provincial offices, the Food and Drug Administration, Cooperative Development Authority, SGS Gulf Limited, Professional Regulations Commission, other government agencies, private and academic institutions. Good afternoon, all, and thank you for joining us.
All right, let us get going with our program. Okay, so to formally welcome our participants, may I introduce one of the very important persons in this event. So he is a geologist with a PhD in Earth Sciences. He was the former director of DOST Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology, and currently the officer in charge at the Office of the Undersecretary for DOST Disaster Risk Reduction and Climate Change, Office of the Undersecretary for DOST Regional Operations, and Office of the Director in PHIVOLCS. He has also been designated as a Commissioner for UNESCO National Commission of the Philippines DFA and serves as member for the Global Assessment Report Advisory Board of the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction up to 2022. All right, so in recognition for his contributions to disaster risk reduction in the Philippines, he has been awarded the Presidential Citation for Public Service, the Presidential Lingkod Bayan Award by the Civil Service Commission, the Professional of the Year in the Field of Geology by the Professional Regulation Commission, the Excellence Award for Government Service by the Philippine Federation of Professional Associations, and the Presidential Career Executive Service Award by the Career Executive Board. Ladies and gentlemen, I am proud to welcome the DOST Undersecretary for Scientific and Technical Services and Principal Representative of PAB Council, Dr. Renato U. Solidum Jr.
Thank you very much. DOST Secretary, Professor Fortunato T. de la Peña, DTI Undersecretary for Competitiveness and Innovation Group, and Philippine Accreditation Bureau Council Chairperson, Dr. Rafaelita M. Aldaba, our esteemed resource persons, Mr. John Echanov from Positive Development SPRL, Engineer James D. E. Empeño from DTI PAB, Mr. Neil P. Hay from DTI BPS, Mr. Manuel M. Ruiz from DOST-ITDI, Mr. Arnel D. Abanto from DAP, and Engineer Cirila S. Botor from PhilMSTQ, friends and colleagues from the DOH, DNR, DPWH, DND, DOE, DA, Association of Structural Engineers of the Philippines, or ASEP, and DOST, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, and welcome to the awareness webinar of the National Quality Infrastructure, or NQI, for PAB Council members and other concerned government agencies. International trade, a practice with history that dates back to the Roman Empire, has since become the heart of the global economy. In the early years, people traveled across the vast lands of Eurasia just so they can trade goods with each other. The practice has evolved with the advent of technology. Transactions are now done online, and people from different parts of the world can already negotiate easily. People tend to import and export more. International trade fueled competition among nations and pushed them to be more innovative and become more conscious of the quality of their products and services. And through the years, some countries have successfully established their stronghold in the global market due to the good reputation of their products and services. But how so? And how can we compete with them? Well, among others, we have to put in place a framework that will help us ensure that we have strong industry standards. And more importantly, that we conform to those standards at all times. That framework is what we call the National Quality Infrastructure, or NQI. A national quality infrastructure is a system contributing to government policy objectives in areas including industrial development, trade competitiveness in the global markets, efficient use of natural and human resources, food safety, health, the environment, and even climate change. The NQI covers essential aspects such as policy, institutions, service providers, and the value-added use of international standards and conformity assessment procedures. I would, however, like to stress that an NQI, to be effective, should be implemented or executed by all concerned agencies and stakeholders. Agencies should work together and not in silos. Yes, we have to cooperate and coordinate with each other to ensure that the industry standards are, as identified under the NQI, are conformed in all aspects of national operations. And I think we are threading the right path. Gathered this afternoon in this webinar are the key players and stakeholders of the country's NQI. The resource persons from the different agencies will share their NQI-related initiatives, and hopefully, from their presentations, we will be able to assess how far we have come and how far do we still have to go in terms of NQI. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the people behind this webinar, especially the Industrial Technology Development Institute and the Department of Science and Technology Central Office for taking care of the webinar arrangements. To everyone in attendance, thank you for taking time to be with us this afternoon. Your presence in this webinar is a testament of your and your agency's commitment to work with everyone in this endeavor. Let us continue to work together to establish a working and effective NQI. That is, an NQI that will hopefully help our country also establish a stronghold in the global market. Magandang hapon po sa ating lahat.
Thank you very much, Undersecretary Solidum, for welcoming our speakers and guests. We'd just like to say that we are also live on Facebook. For your colleagues who were unable to join us in Zoom, they may still watch through our live cast at DOST-ITDI Updates Facebook page. The link is on the Zoom chat box, so go ahead and share it now. For those watching on Facebook, welcome. Please join our discussions by posting your comments or questions at the comment section. So now, to inspire us and set the tone of our webinar through a message, we are honored to have the man behind the Department of Science and Technology. He's a Filipino engineer and a professor. Before he assumed leadership of the DOST, he was the Undersecretary for Scientific and Technical Services from 2001 to 2014. Except for his brief retirement from 2014 to 2016, he has been with the department since 1982 and has served the DOST for more than 30 years. He's a Career Executive Service Officer, Rank 1, the highest level in the career service of the Civil Service Commission of the Philippines. As a secretary, he is distinguished in the forefront of bringing science to the people with his various initiatives and leadership in the field of science and technology. He received various awards such as the Dangal ng Bayan Award from the Civil Service Commission, the Outstanding Career Executive Officer Award from the Career Executive Service Board, the Outstanding Professional Award from the Professional Regulations Commission, the UP Alumni Association Award for Public Service, the UP Alumni Engineers Most Distinguished Alumnus Award, the UP Alumni Association Lifetime Distinguished Achievement Award, and the Ateneo Government Service Award. The University of the Philippines conferred on him the degree of Doctor of Laws, honoris causa in 2018. Please join me in virtually welcoming Secretary Fortunato T. de la Peña.
Magandang hapon sa inyong lahat. Thank you for that very generous introduction. And special greetings to our guest today, and particularly to DTI Undersecretary Rafaelita Aldaba, who is the chairperson of the PAP Council, and to our resource persons today, as mentioned by Yusek Solidum, particularly the principal speaker on NQI, 𝐿 and all our presenters coming from DTI, various bureaus of DTI, also coming from our Industrial Technology Development Institute, from the Development Academy of the Philippines, and to all our guests today. I would like to say that it is I really admire our colleagues that in spite of all the challenges that we have been facing, not only in terms of health, but in terms of our it's not only the human health that has been affected, definitely our economy's health, and even our the social life that we have been used to has of course been affected, and we are now shall we say forced to adjust to the new realities, you know, that we call the new normal. But you know, the application of metrology and the assurance of meeting standards cannot, shall we say, choose the time of application. Particularly today, when there are so many, shall we say, factors that we keep track of, and in particular, people have been, if I may say, looking up to science and technology for solutions to many of our problems. We cannot really set aside the use, okay, the need to use the principles and the techniques involved in metrology. We all know already the definition that it is the science of measurement, and some more often when we hear about it, we just think of calibration and testing. But metrology is not limited to calibration and testing. It has a deeper role to play, and so I would like to just maybe to emphasize the nature of the challenge that we are facing. Maybe we can just look at what we have been used to. For example, when we talk of weights and heights, we still use pounds and feet, you know. But when we talk of area, we are used already to using square meters. When you go to buy clothing or textile materials, you are still thinking in terms of yards, and in many of the products that are particularly in liquid form, you still measure many of these in terms of gallons. And so the challenge is there, and we know that the importance goes in almost all fields, you know, whether you are talking of goods, services, processes that has to comply with quality standards, whether you talk of health and safety requirements, of environmental, shall we say, standards. All of these will require common units of measurement that should be accurate and reliable, and following the fundamental components of science and technology in its application. So metrology, due to its application in all types of activities, whether it is economic, health, environmental, social, can actually be a tool to help produce a multi-sectoral approach in mitigating the impact of problems or challenges that we face in this particular time, like the COVID-19 pandemic. So this multi-sectoral approach requires the development of our national quality infrastructure. And there is really a wide range of potential applications of NQI. We will hear more about it from our resource persons, which can make a significant contribution to our national and international response, okay, to this crisis situation, and also, of course, to our efforts towards recovery and presumed our bid for fast growth. Today, we, for example, hear of what our researchers and scientists have developed, whether they are in the area of diagnostics, whether they are in the area of drugs, whether in the area of vaccines, whether in the area of medical devices, whether in the area of disease modeling. All of them will require, okay, that they will adapt or stick to the international guidelines on metrology or measurement. And so we actually are convinced that it is not only during the pandemic that we need it badly, but even long after the pandemic ceases. So I am very interested to hear from our presenters coming from the different agencies what initiatives they have taken, and maybe later on we can have another session that will talk about our experiences in implementing our policies and our guidelines. Okay, yung what we call the hands-on experience that we have gained. So in closing, I would like to congratulate the organizers, particularly my colleagues here at the Department of Science and Technology. We have Yusek Sulido, Yusek Ibarra, our ITDI, and the people at the Metrology division. And this really is a very timely topic. And I hope our participants, including me, will absorb the concepts that will be presented to appreciate what science and technology is doing for us. And if I may say, this awareness webinar is only the tip of the iceberg for our national quality infrastructure. And I hope this starts or furthers your interest on this subject. So maraming salamat at magandang hapon sa ating lahat.
Thank you very much, Secretary Fortunato T. de la Peña. So metrology is not really limited to calibration and testing. So as what our Secretary have said, so there are various NQI applications for national and international response. So the discussion later will really open us to these various applications. All right, now to give us another message is another pillar for this undertaking. So she is from the Department of Trade and Industry. She fulfills a key role in the formulation and implementation of the Inclusive Innovation Industrial Strategy, which puts innovation at the heart of the country's new industrial policy. Undersecretary Aldaba is also a governor of the Philippine Board of Investments, or BOI, the country's primary industry development arm and lead investment promotion agency. So she is leading DTI's initiatives in preparing industries for the fourth industrial revolution and digital transformation, establishing regional inclusive innovation centers or RIICs, developing new creative industries, and growing a robust startup ecosystem. She oversees the administration and operations of the Competitiveness Bureau, Philippine Accreditation Bureau, and Bureau of Trade and Industrial Policy Research. Everyone, please welcome the Undersecretary for the Competitiveness and Innovation Group of the Philippine Department of Trade and Industry, Dr. Rafaelita M. Aldaba.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much, DOST Secretary Fortunato de la Peña, Undersecretary Renato Solidum Jr., Assistant Secretary Diane Ignacio, our longtime consultant, Mr. John Eschanove, PUB Director James Empeño, BPS Director Neil Katahay, DOST-ITDI, Mr. Manuel Ruiz, DAP, Mr. Arnel Abanto, Philippine MSDQ Engineer Cirila Botor, PUB Council members, fellow workers in government, representatives from the academe, industry, and the private sector, ladies and gentlemen, a very good afternoon. It is a great pleasure to participate in today's awareness webinar on the National Quality Infrastructure. And I would like to thank the Department of Science and Technology for organizing this event and for getting everyone here. This is of particular interest because for a long time now, the Department of Trade and Industry, the Department of Science and Technology, and other government agencies, industry stakeholders, and the private sector have been advocating the establishment of the national quality infrastructure, I think, since the mid-2000s. NQI will integrate metrology, standardization, testing, accreditation, and certification, which are currently being implemented by DOST National Metrology Laboratory and DTI's Bureau of Product Standards and Philippine Accreditation Bureau. Integrating these NQI activities and institutions is one of the necessary conditions for growth. This would enable our industries to boost their competitiveness, enhance consumer safety and protection, and secure market access. International trading relationships are always built on trust, and trust is often based on a structure of standards, agreements, codes, and regulations crafted to ensure that when we buy something, we get exactly what we expect. As emphasized by the UNIDO, setting up a quality infrastructure system is crucial in a country's growth and development journey, as this forms a foundation for prosperity, health, and well-being. The most recent updated Philippine Development Plan indicated the current fragmented nature of our NQI system and highlighted the need for a unified NQI system, human resource development to support standardization, quality and technical regulations programs, and intensified targeted NQI awareness and information dissemination, which is what we are currently doing now. And so far, 2 NQI bills were previously filed by Representative Manuel Luis Lopez through House Bill 6122 and former Senator Bam Aquino through Senate Bill 707 to integrate and coordinate NQI policies and programs towards a culture of quality, innovation, competitiveness, sustainable development, and compliance with international commitments. As we wait for the legislative body's refiling and deliberations on the National Quality Infrastructure Act, this webinar serves an important venue to inform and discuss with our stakeholders the various NQI initiatives of the DOST, DTI, and other government agencies, and provide the public a common understanding of NQI, the policy and institutional framework that implements standardization, metrology, and accreditation, including the roles of different agencies and stakeholders in designing, developing, and implementing an effective NQI. One important takeaway would be by focusing on developing our quality infrastructure, we would be in a better position to improve our trade competitiveness and better protect and enhance the safety of consumers. I hope that the discussions can help guide and inspire further progress in developing quality infrastructure that promotes economic prosperity and people-centered development. Let us continue to collaborate and work together as we respond to this need and create solutions to growth and development challenges that we are faced with: COVID pandemic, economic recovery, Industry 4.0 technologies, and the need for our industries to recover, be innovative, and strengthen their competitiveness. I look forward to a thought-provoking and forward-looking conversation on the topic today. Thank you and maraming salamat po.
Thank you very much, Undersecretary Andaba. Yes, we will take note of what you said, that international trade is really built on trust, and it is because of the system that we call the NQI. It enhances it, and we must really do adopt a culture of quality to ensure that our products are safe and competitive. Thank you, po. To help us understand the establishment of the NQI, let me introduce our guest speaker. He's a versatile, highly qualified manager with more than 15 years of professional experience, an expert in the understanding and assessment of legal and regulatory frameworks for market access. For the last 15 years, he has been leading multicultural teams in Europe and Asia in industry associations, EC projects, and private organizations. Becoming an entrepreneur and a pioneer in introducing a new product in the Asian culture has offered him the possibility to complement his management experience with direct knowledge on business planning, strategic development, and marketing for Asian consumers. He has led and contributed to multiple projects in trade facilitation and best regulatory practices in the ASEAN region that has provided him with a thorough understanding of the main intermediaries and legal and regulatory framework of the region. Please welcome the Managing Director of Positive Development SPRL, Mr. John Echenoe.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you dearly to DOST Secretary Fortunato de la Peña and the Secretary Renato Solidium, and thank you DTI and the Secretary Rafaelita Aldaba. For those who know me, they probably are aware how close the Philippines is to my heart. So today is not just an honor to share my views on the NQA with you. It's a delight to have a new opportunity to meet with my friends and former colleagues from BPS, PAB, and the Metrology Institute. Now, some ideas I want to share with you. I will share the screen right now, but I think that there are two main key messages that I would love to convey today. I'm aware that many of the participants today are as knowledgeable, if no more than I am, about the quality infrastructure and the elements around that. People have been working with for many years. But there are two things that are very important when you look at high level, at high policy level, is how a strategic NQI is for many elements of industrial development or trade facilitation or consumer protection, and the second, and how that has played in the past for other countries that are at this stage more within brackets more developed or more successful. And the second message is how complex it is, and that there are no easy solutions to developing a system of the magnitude and the diversity of stakeholders as the national quality infrastructure. But there are some lessons learned that can be applied, but there are also some challenges for those who arrive to the global trade in a less developed stage or with less diversification of goods. So let me share my screen with you. So now, and the Secretary Renato Solidium already set the ground for me beautifully. He already mentioned the trade interactions and through history, and the fact that already long time ago, in any economic transaction, there has been a way to figure out what is value, what we should exchange, and that has always been there. A huge difference that the Secretary Renato pointed out is that the degree on what trade has become global and diversified has exploded in the last decade. So while in the past, most of the economic transactions would happen in a marketplace, where you go, you test, you see the product, you're happy or unhappy, and then you go and you figure out how much you want to give in return to that good. In the current scenario, we're talking about not only a diversity of partners that we trade in with, we're talking of a highly interconnected system of raw materials, interactions, components from all over the place that come together to a particular product, a particular process, and that turns out in a product for a final consumer or an industry. And there is simply no capacity for any individual to assess and verify all these processes until you say, yeah, this is okay, I like that. The economic cost, the transaction cost that would imply to verify every step of an economic exchange is just impossible to bear. Yeah. On top of the fact that the number of the diversity of partners and raw materials have changed, also we are facing a situation of a huge type. Yeah. Hello.
You're still with us, Mr. Shin.
We can hear
sorry.
you.
Yeah, sorry. We're having a situation where we have an incredible diversity of goods for anything we can think of. Yeah? So choices are not only about whether they meet our requirements or not. It's amongst those who meet our requirements, what are the best that we can choose. Yeah? And how you differentiate between the huge range of products that are available to us, which is the one that works for us. How do you ensure interoperability between products, et cetera, et cetera? So in order to have that, you need to develop a system. Yeah? And a system is composed by a common language. And the common language is that there is an agreement between me and whoever I'm trading or exchanging goods of what represents quality. It has to be an agreement of what is the description of it that I would accept as quality as a buyer or as a seller. There has to be a description on how you develop that quality so that you know what are the components and the processes that lead to that particular quality. Yeah. But it's not enough. That common language of what is quality and how to arrive to that quality is not enough, because how can I know that what you're doing is what it says in the agreement? So I need a way that is agreed between us on how we prove quality, that we prove that indeed the product represents what is written in the agreement. Not enough. On top of that, I need to know if the proof of quality is credible. Yeah? That is not just someone saying, yeah, don't worry, John, this is a good product, I tell you. Well, depends who's that anyone. Yeah. And finally, supporting all those, we need certainty on whatever measures, whatever application and processes we implement to those products, have certainty in what we're measuring, so that if we say 1 meter, it's effectively 1 meter and not 1.2. Yeah. If I pay for 1 meter and I receive half a meter, then I would feel cheated. Yeah. Now, all of that is what you need either to develop products for any level of quality that you set to do, or to trade any products around the world. And that is a system of trust. And that is what the national quality infrastructure is about. It's a set of institutions that are existing to secure trust in economic transactions. Trust that allows businesses and governments to develop better and more competitive products. Or trust that the products and services that are delivered are to a minimum standard that will secure consumer protection. Or trust that I can trade around the world, because both my language and my processes to develop and show quality are recognizable and credible. Now, if you break down what you need, you break it down in four, what we call institutions of the national quality infrastructure. And the first one is standardization. The first one, not in terms of importance. Yeah, the first one in the sense that that is the common language. How are we? What is exactly what we're going to trade, and how does it look like? What is quality? That's the standards. Standards define how you do things. Then you have conformity assessment, testing, and certification. There are the ones that said, yes, indeed, John has developed this computer according to these standards, and it's okay. Yeah, we test it, we prove it, it's correct. Whether it's a product, a service, of a system, someone gives me a certificate, a proof that I have done things according to the standards I claim to respect. Accreditation is the institution that gives credibility to the laboratories and the certification bodies by saying they are competent to deliver those proof of quality. They have the expertise and the know-how and the integrity to do that. And the final one, or the first one, depending on how you look at it, is the metrology that we have already been hearing Secretary Fortunato de la Peña talking about the breadth and scope of metrology, yeah? in giving certainty to the whole economic and scientific development. Now, if you put them all together, you could have a picture like that. This is extracted from the PTB, the Metrology Institute from Germany. Yeah, and you have in the middle of the screen, you have a standardization that provides standards for specific products and services, but it also provides standards for how to accredit, standards for metrology, standards for performing tests or certifying. Of course, you have accreditation, yeah, who is the one giving credibility to that work in the laboratories and certification bodies, and therefore accredits calibration laboratories that are in the scope of metrology, or testing laboratories, or certification bodies. Then you have obviously the certification bodies, the testing laboratories, and metrology that is providing the foundations for any testing activity, whether business or scientific. Now, the important thing of that image, and I'll come back to that later, is is you see on the right of the screen, which is the connection with international system. A highly significant part of the credibility and well-functioning of a national quality infrastructure is how well integrated and recognized is in the international system. The fact that a country works collectively with other countries at international level makes it not only credible to work at national level, but also simplifies many of the processes by taking on board already existing best practices. You don't have to invent the wheel every time you have to do something. Many of the processes, particularly, for example, metrology, requires traceability with other countries and international bodies. You have to make sure that you are measuring in a way that it is obviously traceable to other countries. Accreditation is also essential. That is linked with international standardization, with international accreditation bodies, because it says that accredited bodies by a nation, in this case would be the Philippines, are as competent as other accredited body in the rest of the world. No less is international standardization. We're thinking about trading products and services, or we're trying to implement best practices. Those best practices are often described in international standardization. So why would we make our lives more complicated by developing standards that deviate from international standards? It is in most of the cases when we do that an obstacle for our own industry to develop and to be challenged to compete in the global economy. And this image comes from PTB, and that is I want to give you back more than 100 years in time to think about PTB, because I think it's a wonderful example of developing a national quality infrastructure, or at least the first steps of it. I mean, I would like to highlight that the term national quality infrastructure is fairly recent in economic terms. For a long time, we've been mainly talking about the different components of it without describing it as a system. Now, you have on the screen a made in Germany equipment. I didn't know what it is. Probably it's automotive equipment. But the thing is that nowadays, whenever you hear made in Germany, it automatically evokes on most of us the sense of quality. Oh yeah, it's German, then it's good. Yeah. There is a brand associated to that. Now, it would feel like the Germans themselves have decided to place the made in Germany just to make sure that they exploit that perception of quality, so that everybody understands, no, this is high quality, this is made in Germany. But this is not the case. The reality is that made in label was developed by the United Kingdom with in the intention to solve a problem, a perceived problem by the UK. And what they have is that they felt that there were too many low quality, cheap products arriving to the market from an emerging and vigorous new economy called Germany. So they thought that the best thing to prevent their population to buy cheap, low quality, substandard products was to just have a label that says made in Germany, so that people will say, oh, then is it made in Germany? This is cheap. I better buy something made in Britain. Yeah, I presume that to a point that worked for a time. Now, not many years later, less than a decade, a member of the Siemens family and a relative decided to donate a building and furnish the building with equipment that eventually became the PTB, with the intention to help Germany compete not in price, but in value added. So they are starting creating the conditions to improve the measurements and the applications of a new technology that was still in the early stages of application in the market. And that was electricity. Yeah? And it was because a very new one. Another Siemens member, a family member, joined forces to develop the International Electrotechnical Commission, which is basically the international standards body for the electrotechnical products. Now, this is not random. Yeah, the members of the industry class, businessmen in Germany, knew perfectly well what they were doing. They were setting the basis for a quality infrastructure, as we say today. They invested in creating a metrology institute so that they could go further and faster in measuring and the applications of electricity. They created an international standards body to discuss and align and develop best practices. And they did that to compete in value and to overcome the made in brand or the negative branding of Germany. And I have to say, they have to be fairly successful in doing that. I would find difficult to find someone today who automatically, after reading Made in Germany, think of low quality products. Yeah. Now, what are the elements around and how that institutions and the products of the elements of the NQI work in terms of developing and competing in price or quality? Now, if you have an access of quality from no quality at all, zero quality to infinite quality, then you can see different layers of quality, yeah, and uses of the NQI or uses of the NQI services and elements. Yeah? So you use the NQI to set up the limits for safety and protection, to set it up through standards that are often used to be referred in technical regulation. Yeah? What is the point of developing a technical regulation from scratch if there is already an international standards describing the quality? What you need to do in the national technical regulation or law is deciding what is the minimum acceptable. Yeah, so that you create a bar for safety and a bar of protection, as I said, normally based on international best practices. And any product that falls below that level of quality is not accepted on the market. Yeah, but in order to know if a product falls below that mark of safety or protection, you need to have a system to test it. Otherwise, how do you know? Yeah, and you know that through the quality infrastructure institutions. So you know it through the existing standards, the test results, and therefore for that you would need test laboratories and calibration bodies, laboratories and conformity assessment bodies. And unless you have all these things and they are credible and competent, you actually never know if a product is safe or is within the frameworks of consumer or environmental protection that you're looking for. But also, when you have a product that goes beyond those minimal levels of quality that you want to accept in your country, which I insist should be aligned with international standards. There are very, very few arguments that are valid to say a product is unsafe in Spain, but it's very safe in Belgium. It's unlikely. There have to be very strong scientific evidence. And in order to have scientific evidence to do that, you need a very strong metrology institute. Yeah, you have to have very good testing houses. Yeah, so whatever you want to, whether you want to challenge or adapt international standards, you need a quality infrastructure. But coming back to, if you want to go beyond that, then you will need a way also to prove that you're better. Now, what's the point for me to invest a lot in having a new product that is better if there is no way of demonstrating how good I am? Yeah? And that is how I can do through voluntary standards, voluntary labeling, and voluntary certification. And again, if I want to do that, I need a credible quality infrastructure behind me that can verify my proof of quality. Yeah. Very briefly, what it means competing by price. Well, competing by price is as simple as being able to reach a level of certain quality and a lower cost. Yeah? And the way to do that is only by being able to improve certain of the processes that allows me to do it cheaper, or to reduce the cost of accessing a market, whatever is a domestic or international market. And so if I want to be more competitive in price, I will need definitely a standard. Because if my product doesn't match the already existing international standards, then I'm definitely not competing. Yeah, I will need accredited conformity assessment bodies because I need to prove. And I need to prove in a way that people believe my proof of quality. That is called accreditation. Yeah. And I need, as much as possible, as a country, to reduce the cost of accessing the market. And what does it mean in this context is that I don't have modifications and changes to the existing international standards just because of the sake of it, because the only thing that happens is that my industry will have to adjust to my technical regulations and the technical regulations in other countries. So they have to have two processes. In most of the cases, what will happen for small and medium enterprises is they don't even attempt to trade. Yeah, it's expensive. Second, I don't create burdens for them to have mandatory certification through specific laboratories when I can delegate in other laboratories or certification bodies as long as they are accredited. I trust them because I have a system of trust. And those elements will reduce the cost of my industry to compete, which allow them to compete in price. But maybe I want to compete in value added. One of the key issues for economic growth is diversity. And in that diversity, being able to move up the chain, in the value chain in some of those products. And to do that, basically what it means is that I have more expensive products, but I deliver higher quality. Yeah, I deliver higher quality because I set new standards. I set, as a country, as a nation, as an industry, new requirements that are more demanding than those in other markets. Yeah. Already Secretary Fortunato de la Peña explained it very clearly. You need higher levels of metrology if you want to move further in scientific development, which can be applied to business development. Yeah. If you are leading in a market or you want to lead a market, it is at least expected that you influence international standards so that you set the grounds of what is quality. Yeah, remember the first image in the agreement, what is quality and how to be done? Well, I want to set it up. And finally, if you want to have a system that describes your quality, you would definitely need to have a voluntary certification to show that quality. And again, to have that, you need accreditation bodies. Now, how do you develop a quality infrastructure? I said at the beginning that to this point of the presentation for me is how strategic that is. I mean, if you don't have in mind a quality infrastructure, whether it is as a system, whether it is in just individual components, it will be very hard to help businesses to trade. It will be very hard to help businesses to develop and become more competitive, and it would be harder to justify and protect consumers. Now, in the example of Germany, the main drive was the private sector. This is something that I will come back to that later. But the private sector remains a key player in the quality infrastructure, because the private sector are the ones that are on a daily basis developing and trading goods. And therefore, they are the ones that know what is feasible to do and how to do. They should be at the core of developing standards, voluntary standards. Yeah? The standardization that in international best practices should be an activity that is, as it says, voluntary and recognized by the government, is usually and necessarily led by the private sector, by those who do the products, the services, or the processes. These are the ones that have the know-how. So these are the ones that should be doing it. Yeah. Now, I said recognized by the private sector because over the years, over the processes, over the years and decades and different countries, there is a way of developing standards that is agreed and perceived as enough transparent and open and robust that needs to be guaranteed. Yeah? And in that sense, it is most needed that the government recognizes a particular process of developing standards as the process that is valid for both businesses and for them as a government for using standards, referring standards to regulation, to technical regulations, for example. Now, in the second level, you have the conformity assessment. The conformity assessment are just pure business. Yeah, I have a laboratory, and what I do, I deliver a service, and I charge a fee for the service. So it's with the conformity assessment bodies, and it's proper and it's correct that these are normally private sector initiatives aiming at providing a service and making sustainable for them to grow and earn a living with that. Now, the key issue with conformity assessment bodies is that they need to perform things obviously according to standards, and because of the importance in the system by showing proof that businesses, even governments, are doing things according to the text, according to the text of the standards, these bodies need to be accredited. So it doesn't matter if they are private sector or they are public sector, whether it's a government laboratory, it doesn't matter. What matters is whether they are competent. And in order to be competent, what you need is an accreditation body, who are the ones that will check. Now, accreditation remains voluntary. And it is important because accreditation is a benefit to those service providers. Yeah? It is for them to choose if they want to do an activity that is worldwide recognized or not. Whether they want to raise their game to a point or they can be used, for example, they can be delegated from government bodies, or they can be referred in international transactions. It's up to them to make the investment. Accreditation is not easy. Yeah, it's not one status. It's a process of gaining and reconfirming that you're competent. Now, of course, our recommendation is accreditation is recognized by the government as one of the key elements to prove the competence of the conformity assessment bodies. And ideally, it is performed and offered by an independent body. And the reason for that is that accreditation is so key in terms of integrity that you want to have as many layers as possible of transparency and independence between that body that executes and performs the accreditation and any other players, whether it's government, whether it's businesses, whether it's conformity assessment bodies themselves. Yeah. And then the final one is metrology. Now, metrology is, as you see in the screen, from my point of view, it's a public good. Yeah, having certainty and traceability in the way we measure, it doesn't belong to anybody. It belongs to all. It is so critical and so fundamental to be able to perform basic operations, whether it's in businesses and scientific progress, that it is a public good. And therefore, it is natural and normal, although sometimes it doesn't happen, but it's not natural and normal that it is provided by government. So when you develop or when you engage in reinforcing your national quality infrastructure, the complexity comes that all these people have to be involved and coordinated. That comes, and that led me to my last message today, which is about the challenges. Now, for nowadays, the criteria and the definitions of the elements, of the scopes of the elements, and the interaction amongst those elements of the national quality infrastructure are the basis for the WTO TBT agreement and SPS. Yeah? There is described one way or another what you should have if you want to trade globally. Yeah? And then countries need to implement those agreements at international level and then have the institutions to respond to those agreements. Now, there's an interesting thing here for me, and that's one of the challenges for many countries, and is that if you follow the example of Germany, it is not different from many others. I think it's similar to the United States, similar to UK, similar to France. The institutions and services of the national quality infrastructure were developed by the businesses themselves. It was developed by the people doing products and training products because they needed something. Yeah. So over many, many, many years, the businesses evolved into developing services and emerging, maybe not in the same form as they are today, but some form of the NQI institutions. And the effectiveness of those institutions led to governments to take them seriously and integrate it into the scope on how we regulate trade and how we regulate quality or consumer protection. So it's a bottom-up approach over many, many, many decades that results in a particular set of rules at WTO. Now, turns out that many of the countries that had a different pace in developing and different trade relations may not have enough business network to have those institutions ready. So very often what you find is that countries are requested to develop those institutions from a top-down approach. And that is, for me, the challenge. A national quality infrastructure system works if it's useful, And in order to make it useful, you need businesses involved. If businesses are not involved, the framework will only be partially successful. Yeah. And I think it's because being able to have all these relevant businesses active in standardization, national and international, having all these service providers eager to be accredited, willing to be accredited, for example, is not easy. Understanding the importance to invest in metrology, it is not easy, and how to use it. It is, for me, one of the core elements of making a sustainable quality infrastructure. Because often the people, the staff, the institutions have a sound, proper knowledge and understanding of the importance of the national quality infrastructure. What is hard is to make it sustainable. And sustainability comes from increasing number of users and contributors, and that number mainly comes from businesses. And these are my messages, my contribution. I hope you find it useful. And again, I would like to end with a big thank to DOST for inviting me and for the quality institutions of the Philippines who I value so much. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Echenovi, for your very informative presentation. We witnessed in Mr. Echenovi's talk that the national quality infrastructure brings together these different components or pillars that we call metrology, accreditation, standardization, certification, and testing to make products and services safe, competitive, and of high quality. But he also emphasized that there must be a connection internationally. So essentially, it builds this opportunity of opening local businesses to the world and having this greater participation in global trade. I hope that once the policies of the NQI are set, businesses in the Philippines will grab what the NQI can offer to them. And now I would like to remind everyone that if you have any questions, please use the chat box and Facebook comment section so that our tech crew may start collecting them to be answered later in our live Q&A. I know you have a lot of questions now since our first speaker has spoken, and I know that there are a lot coming. So please let us know so we could clarify everything. And that's it. To you, Rose.
Yes, thank you, Sir Nicole. So now let us hear to this set of speakers to give us updates on the national quality infrastructure initiatives. So first, we have Mr. James E. Empeño. So he is currently the director of the Philippine Accreditation Bureau, the national accreditation body of the Philippines under the Department of Trade and Industry. So this is mandated to accredit testing and calibration laboratories, inspection and certification bodies, and other conformity assessment organizations. So he represents PAB in regional and international fora, such as the International Accreditation Forum, the International Laboratory Accreditation Cooperation, Asia-Pacific Accreditation Cooperation, and the International Halal Accreditation Forum. And he was also involved in international standards development at the ISO Central Secretariat and in the promotion of the national quality infrastructure. Next is Mr. Neil Katahay. So Sir Neil is, next is Mr. Neil Katahay. So he is the director of DTI BPS. So I'm sorry, I lost the notes for Mr. Neil Katahay. So I will again introduce him later. Okay, so our third speaker is Mr. or Engineer Manuel M. Ruiz. So he is the officer in charge of the National Metrology Laboratory. So he was head of the Electrical Standards section of the National Metrology Laboratory, where he gained more than 30 years experience in high accuracy electrical measurements. His previous work assignments at the NML included being quality manager, where he drafted the quality standards manual of the laboratory, proficiency testing manager, and head of the thermocouple and humidity standards section. He was country representative to the APMP, TCEM, APMP, TCTF, and now representative to the APMP, DEC. So he was also a member of the NCC Working Group on NQI. All right, so our fourth speaker is Mr. Arnel D. Abanto. So he is the Vice President and Managing Director of the Development Academy of the Philippines Productivity and Development Center. As such, he has been involved in center-wide and academy-level planning, performance review, and management committee undertakings. His broad range of expertise and more than 30 years of service in DAP have invariably involved him in industry and firm-level productivity undertakings, specializing in measurement and analysis, institutional development and networking, quality and productivity promotions, training, consultancy, and policy and program advocacy. His technical expertise also includes the area of quality management and assessment, productivity measurement analysis and improvement, business excellence regulatory management system, and green productivity, wherein he served as technical expert and resource person for various local and international projects. And of course, finally, our fifth speaker is Engineer Cirilla S. Botor. So she was a former Assistant Director of the Bureau of Philippine Standards and officer in charge of the Philippine Accreditation Bureau. She also trained in metrology at the National Research Laboratory for Metrology in Tokyo, Japan. In 2013, together with Mr. John Echanove, she conducted a study on the national quality infrastructure and government regulatory practices in the Philippines. Currently, Engineer Botor is the president of the Philippine Metrology Standards Testing and Quality, or PhilMSTQ Incorporated. May we have now our first speaker, Mr. James Empeño.
Thank you very much, Ms. Rose. Good afternoon, everyone. First, I would like to thank DOST for organizing this significant event about a very important topic, which is the national quality infrastructure. To Secretary Boy de la Peña, Yusek Renato Solidum, Yusek Fita Aldaba, marami pong salamat sa inyong suporta sa activity na ito. May I share my screen, please? I hope you can see my screen, my slide.
Yes, sir.
Yes, Paul, we can see.
Thank you. To provide a brief background about PAB, in August 2006, Department Administrative Order 04 was issued creating the Philippine Accreditation Office, or PAO. In 2009, Executive Order number 802 was issued recognizing PAO as the central body to accredit inspection, testing, and certifying bodies and other bodies offering conformity assessment services needed by the country. And in 2014, pursuant to Executive Order number 366, approving DTI's rationalization plan, PAO was rationalized to become the Philippine Accreditation Bureau, or PAB. PAB is one of the three NQI pillars, together with the Bureau of Philippine Standards, or BPS, and the National Metrology Laboratory, or NML, of the DOST. So for the involvement of PAB in NQI initiatives, first we have the Trt83 Project. The Trt83 Project was the continuation and expansion of the European Union assistance to the Philippines to promote trade and investment for further economic development, inclusive growth, and poverty reduction. DTI was the coordinating agency responsible for the administrative and financial management on behalf of the Philippine government. PAVI was one of the focal agencies under the NQI component of the project. And by the end of its implementation in 2016, the following developments on NQI were noted. First is the creation of the draft National Quality Policy, which prescribes the commitment from government, medium to long-term objectives, and interrelationship with regulators and industry. I think our speaker, Mr. 𝐍𝐚𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿, was in charge of the drafting of this national quality policy under this project. Second is the inclusion of the NQI as part of the DTI legislative agenda in the 18th Congress. Third is the increased awareness among stakeholders of the need for NQI that serves both industry and regulators. Fourth is market surveillance enhancement and alignment to best practices. And fifth is the institutional improvements within current mandates of some bureaus. PAVI has worked with BPS and the Liaison Office for Legislative Affairs, or DTI LOLA, in the drafting of Senate Bill 707 in consultation with other stakeholders, as mentioned by Yusek Fita earlier. The proposed bill, which was submitted in July 2016, aims to integrate and coordinate policies and programs involving standardization, accreditation, and metrology in order to meet quality requirements for products and services of enterprises with a view of promoting a culture of quality, innovation, competitiveness, sustainable development, and compliance with international commitments. SB 707 presents the components of NQI, the creation of the National Coordination Council, the proposed reorganization of NQI offices, particularly those of the standardization body, accreditation body, and the Metrology Institute, and the creation of the NQI Fund. PAVI was also involved in ISO, IEC, and WTO events. For example, in 2018, Mr. 𝐐𝐮𝐿𝐴 Mojica, the Secretary General of ISO, was invited in Manila to talk on NQI and met with representatives from the Congress and Senate to discuss about the NQI bill. PAVI also participated in the second WTO Technical Barriers to Trade, or WTO TBT, national workshop where updates on the NQI were presented. Third is the UNIDO Global Quality and Standards Program, or DQSP, where PAVI served as a multi-stakeholder TWG convener last January. The overall purpose of the initiative is to help address the urgent need to provide adequate supplies of PPEs in support of the country's COVID-19 response program. This will be done through strengthening capacity of the national quality infrastructure to promote and verify compliance of PPEs and medical devices with relevant quality and safety standards. The major outcome expected of the project, capturing one of the key transformations needed to help achieve the long-term goal, is to strengthen capacity of the country's national quality infrastructure and local manufacturing, including MSMEs, in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, through promoting, assessing, and verifying compliance of locally manufactured PPEs, medical devices, and sanitation products with relevant and internationally harmonized quality and safety standards. Products to be considered include masks, face shields, coveralls, medical gowns, surgical gloves, caps, shoe covers, ventilators, thermal scanners, test kits, and sanitation products and disinfectants. ARISE Plus Philippines is another EU-funded project with the International Trade Center, or ITC, as the implementing agency and secretariat. The overall objective of the project is to foster inclusive economic growth and poverty reduction in the Philippines by improving the Philippines' trade performance and competitiveness. PAB was designated as DTI focal point for outputs 2 and 3. And the main activities under the output of NQI are the following. First is the review and draft of the NQI law and ancillary regulations. Second, promote NQI institutions. Third, survey and map conformity assessment bodies and their services. Fourth, support the development and adoption of Philippine national standards. 5, strengthen NQI bodies and support participation in regional and international MLAs and MRAs. And 6, develop a pool of national quality champions. As part of PAB's efforts to strengthen the NQI, the Bureau is currently conducting talks on the harmonization of accreditation activities with DOH, DA, DOST, DOE, DND, DNR, and DPWH, and the updates on this are the following. On the Memorandum of Agreement between DOH and DTI PAB, the draft MOA was already approved by DOH Executive Committee, and the final draft will be forwarded to DTI USEC-FITA for endorsement to Secretary Lopez. MOA between DTI PAB and DNR as of 30 April, PAB response on the third draft of MOA reviewed by DTI Legal Service were sent to DNR. MOU between DTI, PAB, and the meeting conducted there was a meeting conducted last 30 April where updates related to the accreditation of organic certification bodies were discussed. Fourth is the accreditation of DPWH laboratories. The laboratories are to submit complete application documents to PAB, and PAB has also provided DPWH with guidelines for proficiency testing participation. We are also scheduled to meet with DND, the Department of National Defense, this week to present our mandates and discuss areas of collaboration. On the compliance to international commitments, an important obligation of accreditation bodies is the provision of competent peer evaluators as a major contribution to the international cooperation among ABs. PAB, being committed to this obligation, was able to send out qualified evaluators in recent months despite the pandemic to accreditation bodies in the Asia-Pacific Accreditation Cooperation to help assessing other foreign ABs. We are also in the process of training more evaluators to participate in these international activities. Lastly, PAB met with bureaus under the DTI Consumer Protection Group, or CPG, last March to discuss further areas of collaboration, including the review of the proposed NQI bill. With the proposed NQI bill, PAB hopes to see the creation of the National Coordination Council, which would complete the big picture for an effective national quality infrastructure in the country that will respond to the needs of all the stakeholders. The functions of the Council are to develop the NQI medium and long-term plans, to identify respective roles of government agencies and private entities necessary to pursue NQI objectives, and to formulate and review policies that support programs for businesses involved in NQI. Incidentally, these government agencies identified in the proposed bill are the same agencies that are members of the PAB Council. So we hope to work with all of you in the coming activities related to the NQI. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. James, for your presentation. So may I remind everyone that if you have any questions, so please use the chat box so that our tech crew may start collecting them to be answered live later. Okay, so I would like to call now our next speaker, and I will introduce him again. Okay, so our next speaker is Mr. Neil Katahay. So he is the director of the Bureau of Philippine Standards of DTI. He has been with DTI since 1999 and started with BPS in 2010 as a senior product manager for electrical products under the Standards Conformity Division. He was then appointed as Division Chief, where he served for 4 years before being appointed as Director. He was also the chair of the ASEAN Joint Sectoral Committee for Electrical and Electronics Equipment from 2018 to 2019 and chair of the APEC Joint Regulatory Advisory Committee on Electrical and Electronic Equipment from 2020 until this year. So please welcome Mr. Neil Katahay.
Thank you. Magandang hapon po sa ating lahat. Good afternoon, Jan, Sec Boy, USEC Geb, USEC Fita, USEC Solidum, Director James, colleagues from government. Good afternoon po. I will be presenting the NQI updates from the Bureau of Philippine Standards as requested by our organizer. So can I share my screen? Okay, so here are the updates on the NQI-related initiatives of the Bureau of Philippine Standards. For the NQI initiatives, my presentation and discussion will focus on the availability of Philippine national standards being one of the important pillar of the NQI. Next. Sorry. Sorry, just having some technical problems on my PowerPoint presentation.
All right, everyone. So Sir Neil is still having a technical difficulty. So let's wait for his presentation to be pulled up. So please stand by.
Okay, sorry. Okay, the next is the strengthening of the conformity assessment capabilities of the Bureau of Philippine Standards, particularly on product certification, product testing, and company product audit and inspection. So again, conformity assessment is another pillar of the NQI. And finally, our STRACA promotional activities. So in order for our stakeholders to be aware of what we are doing so far and what we are planning to do. Okay. So okay ba yung okay ba yung presentation? Just
Sir,
to check. Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so proceeding. Next. Next. On the availability of Philippine national standards, currently, the Bureau of Philippine Standards as the national standards body of the Philippines by virtue of Republic Act 4109 or the Standards Law, we have promulgated more than 11,000 Philippine national standards. So those Philippine national standards are both system, test methods, product standards, and other type of standards. Also, the Bureau of Philippine Standards has issued, the Department of Trade and Industry has issued Department Administrative Order number 19-08, series of 2019, or the recognition of standards development bodies as partner of the Bureau of Philippine Standards in the development of national standards activities. So currently, we were able to recognize 3 standards development organizations, and there are ongoing discussions and negotiations both with government institutions and private institutions. Hopefully within the year, we will be able to recognize more standards development organizations. So consistent with what John mentioned earlier in his presentation, that standards development, it is important for us to consider that standards development needs the active participation of our private partners. So the Bureau of Philippine Standards is actively engaging the private partners, the private companies, as well as the private associations to be our active partners in developing standards. So by recognizing them as SDOs, it will be easier for the Bureau of Philippine Standards to develop the standards. We can maximize the participation of our partners, and they just need to endorse the standards developed for possible promulgation as Philippine national standards by the Bureau. At the same time, we're able to formulate and issue the Philippine Standardization Strategy 2021-2023. So we're hoping that with the issuance of the PSS, we will be able to develop more standards that are responsive to our local demands. So we are currently cooperating and coordinating with MSMEs as well as other organizations to hopefully develop more local standards that will address the issue on quality and safety of locally made products. Next. On the technical regulations, next slide, please. Next. Okay, on the strengthening of technical regulations, again, it was mentioned earlier in the presentation of John that standards basically are voluntary. Unless those standards are used as reference in technical regulations issued by regulatory authorities, then the standards or part of the standards become mandatory. So for the Bureau of Philippine Standards, we are currently regulating 88 products. So 88 products out of more than 2,000 product standards promulgated by the Bureau of Philippine Standards. So we are only regulating 88 products. So meaning those 88 products, before they can be marketed in the Philippines, before they can be offered for sale in the Philippine market, they need to undergo the certification process. So they need to bear the certification marks issued by the Bureau of Philippine Standards. So we are planning to include additional products by 2022. So hopefully our recommendations later on will be approved. So we're planning to add hollow blocks, automotive products, as well as the non-medical grade community face coverings or face masks. The certification personnel complement of the Bureau of Philippine Standards from 2015 to 2021 have increased significantly. So from around 18 personnel in 2015, we have now 52 personnel performing product certification activities. Of course, most of them are service providers, and we are currently in the process of requesting the Department of Budget and Management to hopefully provide plantilla personnel for the Bureau of Philippine Standards in order for us to consistently implement our mandate of certifying products. Next slide, please. Additional initiative of the Bureau of Philippine Standards for us to strengthen our capability to implement technical regulations is the automation of our certification activities. We are now using an online product certification system called the Product Certification Information Management System, wherein basically we are processing certification applications end-to-end online. So the clients need to access their online account, submit applications online, and everything will be processed online. So also we are currently the discussion on onboarding of the product certification information management system with the TradeNet is ongoing. So hopefully we can link our system to the system being implemented by the Bureau of Customs. So that way, I think the ease of doing business will be significantly enhanced and addressed. Next slide, please. So at the same time, the Bureau of Philippine Standards is also doing its best to improve our testing capabilities. So the Bureau of Philippine Standards is also operating one testing laboratories capable of conducting product testing for mechanical, wiring devices, appliance laboratories, lamp and related devices, chemical laboratories, as well as wires and cables. So we are currently upgrading our testing facilities, and hopefully in the next 2 years, we will be able to establish a world-class testing facilities for the Bureau of Philippine Standards Product Testing Division. Currently, the Bureau of Philippine Standards is planning to establish additional testing capabilities for the following products: juicer, food mixer, other electrical appliance. But at the same time, we're also seriously considering the e-cigarette, which we are planning to include in our mandatory certification, as well as automotive battery and secondary batteries. For mechanical testing section, ongoing is the setting up of facilities for steel, ceramic tiles, glass, hollow blocks, and cement. The manpower complement of our product testing division currently is 20 personnel, and we are planning to add more as we establish the additional testing facilities. On other initiatives by the Bureau of Philippine Standards to strengthen the national quality infrastructure of the country, we're proud to say that we were able to establish 10 inspection bodies, 8 auditing bodies, and 56 testing laboratories, which served as partner of the Bureau of Philippine Standards in performing our certification mandate. Again, noting the presentation of John, that it is important for us to involve the participation of private organizations, given that the government alone cannot do the entire certification process, given the limitation of resources. So the Bureau of Philippine Standards outsourced some of the certification activities like product inspection, factory audit, as well as product testing. So in the process, we were able to generate 550 plus local employment. So take note that the 550 jobs generated are all local employments, although at the same time, we were able to recognize 26 foreign laboratories participating, making them authorized to issue test report for purposes of our certification activities. Note that we also require and recognize the accreditation issued by the Philippine Accreditation Body, as well as other accreditation bodies signatory to the Asia Pacific, as well as the International Laboratory Accreditation Cooperation. on the promotional activities, the Bureau of Philippine Standards, beginning last year, when the pandemic started, has intensified our promotional activities, awareness activities through the conduct of various standards, technical regulation, and other conformity assessment programs, promotional activities. So we conducted webinars, capacity building, we issued press releases, other media materials, and we're proud to say that I think you will see in your screen that we were able to conduct so many activities. We're also able to improve the standards and conformance portal of the Bureau of Philippine Standards, as well as regularly update and provide useful information through our Facebook accounts. Just some of the webinars or activities conducted by the Bureau of Philippine Standards. Others were in partnership with ISO, IEC, as well as with other government organizations. So for the certification mark, for those who are not yet familiar with the certification marks issued by the Bureau of Philippine Standards, note the following certification marks: the PS mark, as well as the import commodity clearance stickers. I would like also to emphasize that our ICC stickers, we have upgraded the security features of ICC stickers to easily determine the authenticity of the stickers. We introduced the QR code wherein the enforcers, consumers can use their cell phones to scan the QR code, and they will see the critical or important product information needed to verify. So if the information in the products is consistent with the information in the QR code verification system, then the products are indeed certified and the stickers are authentic. Next. So just some pictures of our testing laboratories, wherein we also accommodate laboratory tours or visits, both by students or other or employees from other government agencies, to include our DTI regional and provincial offices. So we regularly conduct training and tours in our testing facility. Next slide, please. So with that, thank you very much for your attention. That is all for the update of the Bureau of Philippine Standards. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Neil, for your presentation. So for any questions po to Mr. Neil's presentation, again, please use the chat box for our Zoom users and utilize the comment section for our Facebook viewers. So currently, we have 120 participants in Zoom and 140 watching us now live in Facebook. Okay, so we encourage everyone to ask questions since we have convened in this activity the people and agencies behind the NQI, and they may clarify all your concerns. Okay, so let us move on to the next presentation. So let us now have Engineer Manny Ruiz from DOST-ITDI. Sir?
Yes, so could I just please share my screen? Okay, so do you now see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so thank you very much, Rose, for your kind introduction. To all our distinguished guests, DOST and DTI officials, colleagues, and co-workers in government, ladies and gentlemen, a very good afternoon. So let me start my talk by telling you who we are. So we are the National Metrology Laboratory, the de facto National Metrology Institute of the Philippines. We are the third pillar of the NQI, the two other being the National Standards Body and the National Accreditation Body. So the NML, the National Metrology Laboratory, is the organization designated by law, particularly the Metrology Act of 2003, to be responsible for establishing, maintaining, and disseminating national physical standards for basic and derived quantities that are internationally traceable and consistent with the meter convention. So as the NMI of the Philippines, we see ourselves as the laboratory of internationally recognized competence and nationally sought for traceability of calibrations. So our mission, therefore, is to establish and maintain and disseminate the national standards of units of measurements to provide international traceability to the measurements done in the country. And this we shall do by competently conducting calibrations, measurements at accuracy levels that are appropriate to the needs of our customers. So in the present system of government, the National Metrology Laboratory is buried under layers of bureaucracy the country, and they are the master section, the president force, third section, the standard section, volume and flow standard section, the electrical standard section, the length standard section, and these are the other metrology in chemistry and metrology in biology sections. So the National Metrology Laboratory is led by overall administrative and technical supervision over the laboratory. ISO 725 guidelines. We now have a staff complement of 36, and all of them have been qualified regularly training to ensure competence. We now have 9 MP holders and counting on our staff. Thus, the German Accreditation Body attests that the NML is competent under the terms of ISO 725 to carry out calibration in the following fields: mass, pressure, temperature, and liquid volume. So our scope of accreditation is minus 30 degrees C to 250 degrees C for the calibration of thermometers, 1 milligram to 50 kilograms for OML class 2 masses, up to 1 kilogram for OML class F1 masses, up to 500 kilograms for OML M masses. From 2 megapascals to 100 megapascals gauge pressure, and from 0.3 megapascals to 100.1 megapascals absolute pressure, and also from 1 microliter to 5 liters for calibration of liquid volume. Our calibration and measurement abilities, or CMCs, are also recognized by National Metrology Institutes the world over through the CIPM MA. So we have 21 CMCs for conventional mass calibrations for the range 1 milligram to 20 kilograms, 10 CMCs for the calibration of IPLTs, liquid and glass thermometers, and digital thermometers for the range -30 to 250 degrees C, and very recently, 1 CMC for the calibration of pressure gauges for the range 0.2 megapascals to 100 megapascals. So for a total of 32 CMCs today. So aside from our primary task of maintaining national measurement standards, our other activities consists of calibration and testing, proficiency testing and measurement audit, training and consultancy services, and very recently, the production of certified reference materials. These are standards that are used to check the quality, the validity, and methodological ability of analytical measurements that are made in chemistry and biology. So among our several measurement and calibration services, we provide calibration of temperature and humidity, measuring instruments and related equipment, calibration of mass standards and weighing instruments, calibration of volumetric wear. We provide calibration of length and dimensional standards, calibration of luminance meters, calibration of hydrometers and density measuring instruments, calibration of moisture meters. We also provide calibration of electrical, time and frequency standards and measuring instruments, and very recently, calibration of flow meters. So these services, they are either made at our base laboratory in Bicutan or on site. So as earlier mentioned, our metrology, chemistry, and biometrology sections produce reference materials. So certified reference materials are standards that are used to check the quality, the validity, the methodological traceability, and of analytical measurements that are made in chemistry and biology. We also conduct training programs on calibration and measurement for industry. The trainings that we conduct are on a regular basis or on a special request basis. So here you see a flyer for the trainings that we have offered late last year in 2020. So because of the pandemic, these trainings were conducted via online means with limited face-to-face sessions held whenever possible. We at the NML organize and conduct also local proficiency testing programs through inter-laboratory comparisons to evaluate the competence of domestic calibration service providers. We also offer measurement audit services on a per request basis. In a measurement audit, the test item is only sent to one laboratory. So just to give you an idea, I show you here the PTs that we have run in the past and continuing to run for physical metrology. So the typical rerun cycle for these PTs is 2 years. And these are some of the PTs that we have run and will run for metrology in chemistry and biometrology. We also provide consultancy services to guide government and private entities on measurement issues and on the establishment or improvement of calibration laboratories. So for example, NML very recently provided PAG-ASA expert advice and assistance on how to meet the PT requirements of their ISO 17025 accreditation with the PAB. So we at the NML do not only provide PTs, but we ourselves also participate in calibration inter-laboratory comparisons that are organized by international and regional metrology organizations as a credible and transparent means of demonstrating our competence. So shown here are the international comparisons. The Metrology and Chemistry section of the NML has successfully participated in recent years. So we at the NML, we represent the country in international and regional metrology organizations and fora and participate in the discussions that are held therein. It is in these meetings that where intercomparisons that are needed to prove competence of member national metrology institutes are proposed, planned, and discussed, and where members are updated on each other's development activities and projects. During these meetings, we also take the opportunity to discuss with experts in measurement difficulties and problems that we encounter at the NML to try to elicit solutions or improvements for our measurement setups. So with all of these activities that I have previously mentioned, let us now take a look at some statistics about the NML. So now we have 36 regular personnel rendering about 15,000 services to around 1,800 clients and generating 17 million plus on the average income annually. So that would be an equivalent of 1 to 50 personnel to customer ratio. So to date, we have 32 CMCs published at the BIPM Key Comparison Database, signifying that our measurement results are recognized internationally. We are a member of the Asia Pacific Metrology Program, which is a grouping of national metrology institutes from the Asia Pacific region aimed at improving metrological capability through the sharing of expertise and exchange of technical services among members. It is in the APMP where the calibration and measurement capabilities of the Philippines are vetted by its peers before being endorsed to the world's highest authority in metrology, the BIPM, for approval and eventual publication. I'm also a member of the Asia Pacific Legal Metrology Forum, which is a grouping of legal metrology authorities in the Asia Pacific rim aimed at promoting free and open trade in the region through harmonization and removal of technical barriers to trade in the field of legal metrology. So the Asia Pacific Legal Metrology Program was established to build the capability of legal metrology authorities, as well as to increase awareness of the economic and social benefits of legal metrology within the Asia Pacific economies. We are an associate member of the General Conference of Weights and Measures, which is an intergovernmental organization established to ensure the propagation and improvement of the National System of Units, or the SI. So the Philippines has been an associate member of the CGPM since June of 2002. NML-PHIL is a signatory to the CIPM Global Mutual Recognition Agreement among National Metrology Institutes. This CIPM MRA is the framework through which national metrology institutes demonstrate international equivalence of their measurement standards and calibration and measurement certificates they issue. So this MRA is an open and transparent scheme that gives users reliable information on the comparability of national metrology services that is used to provide technical basis for agreements made for international trade, commerce, and regulatory affairs. So the following Philippine NQI bodies are listed in the BIPM website. So we have the National Metrology Laboratory of the Philippines as the NMI, the STD or the Standards and Testing Division of the ITDI, as a designated institute for chemistry since January of 2014. The Bureau of Product Standards Laboratory Accreditation Scheme as the national accreditation body, and the Bureau of Product Standards as the national standards body. And now for the status of the Metrology Bill. As of March of last year, 2020, a substitute bill has been approved in principle by the Committee of Science and Technology of the House of Representatives, but needs at least one public consultation. The planned public consultation was caught in the midst of the COVID lockdown. So in the meantime that we are unable to conduct the public consultations, we have been conducting metrology awareness webinars for the technical staff of the Committee of Science and Technology, so that if and when we can continue to conduct hearings, the bill would still have to hurdle the tough scrutiny of the House Committee on Appropriations before it gets referred to the plenary for second reading. And as far as the Senate is concerned, the proposed bill has been referred to the Senate Committee on Science and Technology. We need to meet with the author senators and give our comments to their respective bills. The cost of the Committee of Science and Technology has many times scheduled a committee hearing on our bill, but were canceled due to the pandemic situation and other pressing events requiring immediate attention of the Senate. So in the meantime, we conducted webinars on metrology for the appreciation of the Senator's Chief of Staff and other technical staff of the Senate. If the committee hearing pushes through, the cost will create a technical working group to draft a substitute bill. And thereafter, the Senate will conduct at least one public consultation before it gets referred to the plenary. Given the current situation and the implementation of minimum health safety protocols, and of course the preparation for the coming elections, we say that there would be a low chance of the bill being approved by the present Congress. So our best effort for the last remaining days of Congress is to have our substitute bill at least passed by the Committee of Science and Technology in both chambers of Congress, then refile the bill in the next Congress. We foresee that the bill will be easier to pass next Committee of Science and Technology, since it has already been approved by the previous Congress. So the main points of the proposed modernized National Measurement System Act are one, the reorganization of the National Metrology Board, not only with respect to its composition, but also with respect to its functions, that is to oversee and coordinate the implementation of legal methodological control of measuring instruments and measurements in the regulated sector. Two, the transformation of the existing National Metrology Laboratory to the National Measurement Institute of the Philippines. And third, the designation of the National Measurement Institute as the country's National Metrology Institute. On March of this year, we received a letter of reply of the Department of Finance to the Speaker of the House of Representatives, containing the Department of Finance comments on various bills, including the bill to strengthen the National Measurement System in the Philippines by amending the National Metrology Act of 2003. And the letter reads, the DOF acknowledges the noble intent of the proposed measures. However, we do not support the proposals for the following reasons. And the reasons are on the proposed creation of the NMI. The proposal to create another institute is contrary to the present right-sizing policy of the national government. And the letter says, moreover, the NML is an existing office under the DOST that's already responsible for establishing and maintaining the national measurement standards for physical quantities as well as their dissemination to the users. So your comments to this letter are most welcome. So thank you for allowing us to give you updates on the NML and its contribution to the activities of the NQI in the Philippines. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Engineer Manny. So should you have any questions po with his presentation, so for our participants, please key in your questions at the chat box in Zoom and comment section on Facebook. And we will be discussing them later at the Q&A portion. All right, so may we now have our fourth speaker. So our fourth speaker is Mr. Arnel Abanto from DAP.
Okay, good afternoon to our distinguished guests, officials from the DOST, DTI, and other agencies involved with the national quality infrastructure. Allow me to share with you our initiatives towards strengthening the national quality infrastructure. By the way, can you hear me clearly?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
thank you. So let me proceed. Our presentation this afternoon, next slide please, will cover three main points. One is about the draft executive order to create an interagency task force for NQI to strengthen the testing capability of laboratories. And the second point, we'll share with you some learning exchanges and benchmarking with relevant institutions in other APO, Asian Productivity Organization member countries, and some fine studies that we did through benchmarking with other countries. So let me begin with the first one. Next slide, please. So we took note of the importance of the NQI, more particularly its relevance in helping improve national productivity, as we are fully aware that institutional framework along this area of standardization, conformity assessment, and so on, will greatly contribute in improving national productivity. So the Academy, being a national productivity organization, we did some reviews or consultation with stakeholders along this area, and some of the key points that we gathered are as follows. Next slide. So accordingly, the NQI is considered to be effective under a decentralized institutional system. I believe this is the spirit behind the proposed bill. And very important note that we gathered is the point raised that each component of the system should be performed by legally autonomous but effectively coordinated bodies. And third point, this is something that also came out in a series of our regulatory reviews, that developmental function should be decoupled with regulatory functions to avoid conflicts of interest. And that the management systems of our NQI, so National Quality Infrastructure Bodies, are aligned with relevant international standards. Given these points, we try to examine our existing practices, and very important to note that we have a number of agencies performing say, testing, certification, accreditation, inspection services, but many or some of them are not aligned or not implementing relevant international standards. So the other points that we gathered, next slide, are those related to our legislation structure. So it's very interesting to note that we have this proposed bill. Hopefully, this is anchored on the overall policy framework. And along this line, as we know, there are some efforts to amend related laws, but if these are not taken within the overall context and the purpose of the NQI, we may have some problems later on. Related to the reviews that we gathered or interviews that we conducted, some of the points highlighted by our stakeholders is the importance of adding a sunset clause in these laws to ensure that these are reviewed on a regular basis to ensure its continuing relevance given the changes that may happen in this area. Another thing is the institutional design coupled with alignment or enhancement of pertinent competencies of these bodies. We are fully aware of certain institutions, say, performing inspection functions, but those assigned may not necessarily possess the relevant competencies as may be desired under this kind of institutional functions. Very important to note also from this work that we have gathered, the significance or the importance of technological support. We are fully aware that the flow of information in these institutions working as elements of the entire system need to be supported with appropriate technologies to ensure that we have a seamless flow of information across the different institutions. And we are also interested to see how traceability mechanisms may be achieved given the current situation. This is particularly important when we talk about quality, safety, and security, where such element of the infrastructure is or institutional design is really critical to ensure that information across government bodies may flow without passing this, making this burdensome to our industries and regulated entities. So now let me share with you updates regarding the executive order. So the draft executive order creating an interagency task force for national, for the NQI, to strengthen the testing capability of laboratories and enhance the quality standards of locally produced goods in time of COVID-19 and beyond, and for other purposes, was crafted in line with some efforts drawn from the our Asian Productivity Organization, recognizing the need to help local enterprises to meet possible increases in demands for locally produced products, but equally raised question is our ability to improve or ensure quality of these locally produced products. And interestingly, the draft EO, which is now being forwarded to the Office of the President, is anchored on the premise that our MSMEs, recognizing their role in the economy, need assistance in terms of ensuring that their produced the products are of quality to meet our local requirements. But this is where the support of testing and analysis laboratories would be highly necessary to improve the quality of this product. So given that as a background, with the guidance of our directorate through the APO and NEDA, we were requested to help come up with this kind of issuance. So next slide. Along this area, we consulted the concerned agencies in crafting the EO, and the agencies are primarily those performing functions related to our national quality infrastructure. So nandiyan po ang DTI, DOST, DA, and other agencies. So their inputs were considered in this executive order, given that the bill or the NQI law is still being reviewed. No? So next slide. So for this EO, the overall intention is to help improve productivity and quality as the key point to help improve and facilitate the recovery of our MSMEs by way of creating an interagency plan to support in enhancing the capability of testing and analysis laboratories, to extend these services to our MSMEs to improve the quality of locally produced products. So with that as the overall intention, next slide. The EO, the draft EO, is anchored on the policy of trying to build the capacity of our micro, small, and medium enterprises to improve the product qualities and expand their domestic production, and make use of the existing resources from the public and private institutions through collaboration of the different players in this area, by defining the roles and responsibilities and how we may interact together along this direction. So the policy measures and institutional mechanisms will come out to be one of the key outputs of this in implementing this EO. Next slide. So the roles and responsibilities of the different institutions were outlined in that draft EO. But in terms of funding, it will be sourced from the current appropriations of the agencies participating. But this will work towards formulation of a work program to help address the overall intention of this issuance. There will be an assessment of the initiative to be done as possible inputs in the proposed bill related to the NQI. So that's about the EO. As I mentioned, EO is now, I think, it's been transmitted to the Office of the President for review and approval after we have put together the comments from the different agencies and other stakeholders. Okay, the next point that we'd like to share with you is the benchmarking study that we are doing, one of which is the bilateral cooperation between our country and the Vietnam. In this case, our counterpart is the Directorate for Standards, Metrology, and Quality of Vietnam, or DOST-STII. So we had this session with them last 18th of September 2020. Next slide. And this was participated in by both institutions of Vietnam related to NQI and our institutions in the Philippines. And we had a very good exchange of information, and we are looking forward to some partnership with those institutions so that we will be able to help each other in promoting related initiatives to strengthen and develop productivity and quality of the micro, small, and medium enterprises in the region. So next slide is, okay, so that event that we conducted, Vietnam was able to share their strategies and experiences in mainstreaming the NQI framework, pretty much similar to our framework. And we took note of their separate laws for standards, metrology, quality, etc. And they have a very good participation coming from the private sector. And they are currently facing some challenges as certain ministries are recommending the direct use of international standards, meaning wala na siguro masyadong localization. And their law does not allow direct use of international standards. So this is something that they have to reconcile. Socialization of standards development is also being encouraged in Vietnam. The other point that we would like to share with you, next slide, is the benchmarking study related to, before that, let me share with you the result of the rapid survey on laboratory facilities that are involved in product quality testing and analysis. So we did this in last year, and recent study on regulatory management in agriculture and fishery, a benchmarking study from 2018 to 2020. Regarding the survey on laboratory facilities, the purpose was to have some baseline information on the capacities of our testing laboratories. Most of the participants or respondents came from the government, and they highlighted the need to improve their equipment and have some backup to attend to increasing demand for testing and analysis. They're also concerned about staffing. They need more people who are competent enough to perform such services, as well as the need to strengthen their laboratory services in line with the provisions of RA 11032. So they're challenged by this law to accelerate the delivery of testing and analysis services. Regarding the benchmarking, next slide, please. So we did a benchmarking study to enhance the regulatory management in the agriculture and fishery sector, and the report is available online. Very important to note here is the implementation of regulatory management systems framework and the focus on safety and quality controls used at the broad-based framework in identifying hazards and risk-based risks that may affect certain industries, as well as how they make use of the information to improve the supply chain and address inefficiencies throughout the chain. And they have been doing a number of reviews of related regulations. So the best practices observed in this report are those coming from South Korea and Thailand. So this is available for your reference. And we are interested to see how, for instance, traceability may be enhanced in our country, because South Korea has a very good traceability system, and they have a very good mechanism when it comes to verification and testing services. I guess that's all from our end. Thank you very much for giving us this opportunity to share our initiatives.
All right. So thank you, Mr. Arnel, for your presentation. So we will be opening the Q&A portion in a while. So just keep posting your questions, and our chat moderators in Zoom and in Facebook Live are collecting them. Okay, so we are now down to our final speakers. So let's give it up for Engineer Cirilla Botor of PhilMSTQ. Ma'am? Ma'am, you're still on mute po.
May I be allowed to share my screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Slideshow. Slideshow na muna. Diyan. Slideshow muna dyan. Diyan, lalakang mo. Slide. Yung current slide. Lakihan mo. Lakihan mo na. Okay. Do you already see my screen?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
And can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Very well po.
Okay, thank you. This will not be a long presentation, but I would like to thank DOST for organizing this webinar, because as I was introduced, I was the head of the Philippine Accreditation Office, and it became a bureau. And this is the first time that we have two undersecretaries and no less than the Secretary of the Department of Science and Technology is present in this webinar. So congratulations. And I see this is a big improvement in the field of NQI here in the Philippines. Okay. So I'm glad I am the last presenter, and this will not be, as I said, a long presentation. So this is the outline of my presentation. Who are we? I think we are the least known because we are not a government agency. And what has PhilMSTQ accomplished so far? And what are the initiatives of PhilMSTQ presently? So we are the Philippine Metrology Standards, Testing, and Quality, Philippine MSTQ, PhilMSTQ for short, Incorporated. And we were incorporated in 2006 as a non-stock, non-profit association of volunteer professionals and other citizens interested in its advocacy. Now, these volunteer professionals are mostly retired professionals from the field of engineering, chemistry, food technology, and management engineering. So those are mostly the members of PhilMSTQ. Now, what is PhilMSTQ's advocacy? We advocate the strengthening of a unified, responsive, and sustainable infrastructure in the country for metrology, standards, testing, and quality, or for short, MSTQ. So that is our advocacy. So anybody who is interested in being part of this advocacy can be a member of PhilMSTQ. Now, Dr. Clement Sanetra, who was the PTB consultant of the Metrology Institute of Germany, was instrumental in establishing PhilMSTQ. So in 2004, they were here in the Philippines assisting the National Metrology Laboratory. So since they are the Metrology Institute of Germany, they were also interested in assisting our metrology laboratory. But they saw, or he saw, that it's not only metrology that was weak in the country. So he suggested that we establish an organization so that they can also assist us in other areas. So that's why, because if we do not have a body that can receive their assistance or donation, it will be difficult for them to assist agencies that is not part of the metrology laboratory. So we have a definition here of the national quality infrastructure. It is the totality of the institutions in a country available in the public and private sectors to implement standardization, metrology, accreditation, and conformity assessment. So this was clearly explained by John earlier. What should be, there are agencies, like for metrology, the highest accuracy should be with government. But lower accuracy secondary laboratories calibration laboratories can be run by the private sector. Conformity assessment bodies, testing agencies, certification agencies can be with the private sector. So it is actually the total institutions in the country for standardization, metrology, accreditation, and conformity assessment. In some countries, standardization is not run by government. Accreditation, for example, in the US, it's not only run by government. There are many accreditation bodies for laboratories that are run by the private sector. So that's NQI. So we are showing the same slide, and this is actually the chart of Dr. Sanetra, the same chart that was shown to you by John. And you can see here that accreditation, standardization, and metrology are really interdependent. They were assisting metrology during that time, but metrology is connected with standardization. It is used in standardization. Standardization needs accurate measurement. Accreditation also needs accurate measurements. So that's why it was wise for us to have this national Philippine MSTQ so that we can integrate all the efforts on the different institutions for our national quality infrastructure. So this has, you can see lines connecting standardization to accreditation, standardization to metrology, standardization also used in certification because you need standards in certification, you need standards in testing laboratories, and then it goes to our industries, and regulatory bodies also are using the different services of the national quality infrastructure. Now, what have we done in PhilMSTQ? We held seminars on food safety and metrology and chemistry, and this was attended by participants in industry, from industry, relevant government agencies, academia, etc. We also conducted symposia with participants from industry, academia, regulatory agencies to increase awareness on NQI. So most of our information dissemination is really increasing awareness on the national quality infrastructure, particularly the benefits on having NQI. Now, we held several fora on good regulatory practices. Now, regulatory agencies can push the establishment of the national quality infrastructure. If you can see, many of the regulatory agencies in our country are still doing conformity assessment instead of concentrating on their regulatory function. So their resources are spread out in regulation and in conformity assessment. And we would like our regulatory agencies to become more efficient in their functions. So if they use the NQI services, they will become more efficient as regulatory bodies. We also did a one-stop project with the Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources, BFAR, because PTB during that time would also like to assist them with their laboratories for fisheries and aquatic resources. Now, PhilMSTQ launched the proficiency testing program in microbiological analysis. Now, we would like to have other PT programs like for chemical testing, but we are having difficulty hurdling the requirements of the Philippine National Police and the PDEA for chemical samples that will be imported, because we import the samples from PT providers abroad that are accredited. So right now, we only have PT programs for microbiological analysis. We develop training materials for basic courses on metrology, standardization, and accreditation. So this is what we use in educating and creating awareness on the public on NQI. Now, using the Kalidena method of PTB, they developed actually, Kalidena is actually a word that was coined coming from kalidad and cadena. So quality chain, actually. It is a quality chain, and this was also introduced by our consultant, PTB consultant, and we developed and published a guidebook for quality assurance in dried mango processing. Now, 2 SPICE activities were held in Manila and Iloilo, where MSMEs from the food industry were invited to participate. SPICE stands for standardization, productivity, innovation, and certification for food enterprises. So it was intended to educate our MSMEs from the food industry to be aware of standards, accurate measurements, productivity, and certification to create demand for NQI services. Now, our current initiatives, we will continue to hold free webinars for the general public's understanding of NQI, and particularly its benefits. Like, for example, last year, we conducted 3 webinars, and it was showcasing the success of an MSME using the NQI services. Now, we will continue to hold forum on good regulatory practices, continue to run PT programs and scout for other programs, such as for chemical testing and other tests. We will continue to conduct seminars and training on ISO IEC 17025, ISO IEC 17065. Now, these 2 standards are accreditation standards. And there are not many institutions or entities in the country that are offering seminars and training for accreditation services. We will also be using ISO 19011 for internal audit, ISO 9001 for quality management system, method validation, measurement uncertainty, and other accreditation and certification standards. Now, we will also review existing NQI bills, and these are House Bill 6122 and SBN 707. Because in these bills, you still have the three pillars. You have accreditation, you have standardization, and metrology. So in both of these bills, still talks about the three pillars. However, metrology, as we all know, is already having its own bill in both houses of Congress. And we said probably standardization and accreditation will have to have separate bills because metrology is no longer it's no longer part of that because it has a separate bill. I do not know how it will be because we tried to review this in PhilMSDQ and we said maybe this is affected now with the bills that are already in both houses of Congress for metrology. So these are actually what my presentation is for today. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Engineer Botor, and to our other speakers. There is no doubt that the pillars of the NQI and supporting organizations are working very hard to provide the needs of their respective customers. Under the NQI, they will join together to not only ensure compliance of the products to safety and quality requirements, but also add value to make them competitive and stand out. Then also reducing technical barriers to international trade, reducing costs due to repeating of technical tests and accreditation at the country of destination, and making products internationally competitive through innovation and product development. Thank you. And Rose?
Okay, so we are now opening the virtual floor to questions and answers. So our Q&A will be moderated by our officer in charge at the Office of Deputy Director for Administrative and Technical Services and the Chief of the Planning and Management Information Systems Division of DOST-ITDI. So please welcome Dr. Zoraida V. Ang. Dr.
Yeah, okay, nakamute pala ako, sorry. Okay,
Yes,
thank you, Ms. Rose. Now, the floor is now open for our Q&A portion. Our speakers who have presented earlier their updates on the NQI-related initiatives will be on standby to answer the questions from our participants. Okay, I would like to acknowledge again our distinguished speakers, Mr. John 𝐐𝐻𝐿𝐵 from the Managing Director of Positive Development SPRL. We have Mr. James Empeño, the Director of PAB, Mr. Neil Katahay, the Director of the BPS, Mr. Arnel Abanto, the VP from DAP. We have Engineer Cirila Bator, who just presented the PhilMSDQ. And of course, we have our very own Engineer Manuel Ruiz, who is the OIC of the National Metrology Division of the DOST-ITDI. Now, in the interest of time, the questions from our participants were already gathered from the chats of the Zoom platform and also from the comment section of the DOST-ITDI's FB page. Okay, so let's now keep the ball rolling for the Q&A. The first question I gathered was, what do you call this? That was already answered. What is the current status of the metrology bill? That was already mentioned by Engineer Ruiz during his presentation. I have here from a certain MV Mountain that the question was posted in the FB. live page. Okay, and the question is, where's the price factor here? I think this is addressed to Mr. 𝐍𝐚𝐿. Where's the price factor here? Price is also important in creating and trading products worldwide. A lot of countries use price advantage, disregarding quality, in gaining market share in their quest for development. It happened in Japan, Taiwan, South Korea, etc. In 50s to present. As they progress, they do scale up in creating quality products. Look at Japan, Taiwan, South Korea, etc. Germany is very successful because it's their niche in the market from the very start. By the way, China is playing from Japan's playbook of the past, and China is very successful on that. So that's a question from Mr. I don't know if it's a Miss or Mr. MV Mountain from FB. May we now hear from Mr. 𝐍𝐚𝐿?
Yeah, here I am. Thank you. Thank you so much for the question. Very relevant one. I would like to split it into parts. Yeah. On the one hand is whether competing in price is a good strategy or not. And I think you already mentioned, yes, it is. Having a market share allows you to develop your industry. And that is a path that many countries have followed, that a way to access a market is through competing in price. Yeah. Now, and that, that's in many ways is the path that China has followed, and many other countries. Yeah. In order to compete in price, you have to be competitive in price, meaning that you have to produce cheaper. Otherwise, you cannot sell cheaper. Yeah, so you have a competitive advantage, either because you have access to cheaper resources, whether it's labor or whether it's raw materials, but you're able to do it cheaper, and therefore you sell cheaper. Yeah, in the current global economy, because distribution cost is very low, then there is a facility or an easiness to sell across the world. Competing in price is you produce less. No, but that is purely a business decision, where might not have any relevance into the regulatory field. Yeah. Now the question is, if I am able to develop a product that it is very cheap, and therefore maybe of lower quality, am I allowed to sell them or not in a market? And the question is nothing to do with its quality compared to its price. From a regulatory point of view, the question is whether the product is unsafe. Now, it is not unsafe. There's nothing for the regulatory bodies to do. It is up to the consumers to decide if they want to buy a cheaper, low-quality product, or they want to invest on a higher quality product. And sometimes many of us will not have the money to buy a higher quality product, which we don't have the cash flow. We wish we could, where we don't, so we buy a lower quality one. And that is the niche that these countries exploit, that people want to buy cheap products even at the cost of quality. Now, does it harm in economic terms? I don't think so. I think that that's part of the competitive nature. Now, it is an issue that if you are trying to develop a national industry that cannot compete in price, then you have an issue because other countries can. Yeah? Is it legitimate to close the market to develop your industry? I don't know. It's not for me to say. Yeah, but if you close the market, you better be sure that your industry develops quickly to the point of competing with the open world, because otherwise what you're going to have is a lot of smuggled goods in your country. Yeah. So to sum up two questions, yes, competing in price leads to growth if you can compete, either because you have the resources and the competitive advantage. Second, the concern of quality is only for the regulatory bodies if the product is unsafe and you can prove it's unsafe. That is low quality, as long as it doesn't create a problem for consumer protection or safety, it's just a matter of competing. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for that answer, Mr. Echenobe, which I agree. It's always a matter of the decision of the, the company if it wants to be adopting a cost leadership strategy or a quality leadership, first to move market strategy or what have you. Anyway, so that's the answer of Mr. Echenobe to the first question. Can we move on to the next question, please? So this one is coming from Dr. Nuna Almansor, who is a member of the Phil MSTQ. And her question, I think, would be responded to by Mr. Nel Katahay. And the question is, for BPS, okay, there are already testing laboratories on the products mentioned. Why will BPS put up similar testing labs? Can PUB accredit these existing labs? Wait, wala ako. Wait. Na-delete ang question sa aking Google Sheet. Why is it gone? Okay. Okay, so I'll just read it on screen. Instead of for BPS to use them for the certification of incoming products, if these labs need to be upgrading to suit international requirements, this way government can save money and will allow the maximum use of existing labs. Mr. Katahay, please.
Thank you, ma'am, for that question. First, we would like to clarify that the BPS testing laboratory is not just intended to conduct product testing for certification purposes. So we are putting up laboratories for purposes of standards development, product research, assistance to MSMEs, as presented earlier, assistance to our students. And at the same time, our testing laboratory shall serve as the national reference laboratories in case results of the private laboratories will be contested later on. I think that is the primary purpose of our testing laboratory. Of course, there are other products that currently there are no private testing laboratories capable of conducting the test, and as such, our own testing laboratory is the one handling the product testing. But we really would like to be very clear that we don't want to compete with the private testing laboratories, which in the first place were encouraging to put up and invest. So on the accreditation, of course, we encourage all our recognized testing laboratories to be accredited by the Philippine Accreditation Bureau. But at the same time, as they prepare for accreditation, so we are recognizing them, and they now may conduct or can conduct product testing for purposes of our certification scheme. So we want to assure our private testing laboratory partners that we will not be competing. And of course, other government laboratories, we also encourage that if there are private testing laboratories, not to compete with the private testing labs. Of course, the testing rates will make a big difference. So compared to private laboratories, the government laboratory testing rates are way low. So that is why I think we also, in the past, we also experienced problems in terms of queuing, because almost all of our clients would like to submit their samples in our testing laboratories due to the testing rates. But we have issued a policy that if there are private testing laboratories, we encourage our client to submit the test samples to private laboratories, unless, of course, if the clients are really micro enterprises and testing fees will be a big factor in the conduct of their business. That is the only time that we will accommodate test samples from our clients and be tested in our own testing laboratories.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Neil. So there was this emphasis from Mr. Neil that they are not competing with the private laboratories. In fact, they are encouraging more laboratories to be put up, etc. So we proceed now. We have so many questions, I think. So we are extending actually. It's already time, no, 4:30 lang tayo. Anyway, we proceed with the next question. This one I think will be answered by Mr. James Empeño. This is coming from Ms. Hermelina Bion, also from the PhilMSTQ, POT. How can we have one accreditation scheme? PAB is mandated to be the primary accreditation body for testing labs based on ISO 17025. But there are other government agencies requiring testing labs to have accreditation from their agencies in order to be included in their list of recognized testing labs for certain products. Mr. Empeño?
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Dion. And this issue on overlapping accreditations in some government agencies is actually identified as one of the challenges in our list as far as accreditation is concerned. And based on initial evaluations, there are government agencies that are performing supposedly accreditation activities, but upon verification, these activities are actually licensing or recognition activities. And so as part of our efforts to strengthen the NQI, we are working currently with some government agencies, starting with the members of our PAB Council. We are working on a memorandum of agreement and memorandum of understanding with DOH, DNR, DAPs, DPWH, and also with DNT. So we hope to address or settle this issue with them, and we will be providing you updates regarding this initiative. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Empeño. I guess there is no other additional input from other speakers. The other speakers can join the discussion even if it is not addressed to you. If there are, some insights that you can also provide.
Can I say something?
Yes, please, Engineer Bator.
Yeah, the mandate of PAB comes from EO 802, and the accreditation mandates of the other agencies emanates from Republic Act. So that's the problem. Not until there's a Republic Act that will give PAB the mandate to be the sole accreditation body in the country, then it will be difficult for PAB to just, for those agencies to give up those mandates that they get from certain acts. So I think the PAB mandate should really be strengthened, not just from an executive order.
Okay. Ma'am, will the NQI respond to this concern?
If it is defined, if it is clarified in the mandate for an NQI, but the difficulty in having three agencies, accreditation agency, standardization agency, and we still have metrology in one bill will be a difficulty. Yeah. So probably if there is a mandate for PAB, a Republic Act for PAB, a Republic Act for standardization, because they have a law that is as old as what, 1964 mandate for standards, then probably that will improve the status of these NQI bodies.
Yes. So, ma'am, are you suggesting therefore that the concerned agencies initiate a review of, just like what the Metrology did, based on the Republic Act, there are some gaps identified. So here comes the modernization, the substitute bill, improving it. Are you suggesting that the same be done by the agencies to have their own Republic Act?
yeah, the same thing that should be done for standards and for accreditation, so that it will become responsive to what is going on internationally.
So I don't like to put the words in my mouth that would the NQI bill be a futile effort. Maybe hear from Mr. Empeño about this, the comment from Engineer Bator.
Yes, ma'am, and thank you very much also, Ma'am Shirley, for that recommendation. We are actually considering the proposal of having a separate bill or law or accreditation law. And actually, this morning I received an email for a schedule for the convening of our internal technical working group on with the legislative with the liaison office of DTI, and we are scheduled to review the previous NQI bill and also consider other proposals such as a separate standardization law and a separate accreditation law.
Okay, thank you, sir. We will be looking forward to it. Yes, all the participants as well agree with it. No? So we proceed now with the next question. This one is coming from an anonymous from a Facebook post. And the question can be, I think, answered by Mr. Katahay. Does BPS recognize PAB accreditation in certification of mandatory products?
I don't know what accreditation is being referred to, but to answer the question, yes, we recognize PAB accreditation both for inspection body, auditing body, and testing laboratory. So if any of our testing laboratory, inspection body, or auditing body is PAB accredited, then they will be recognized by the Bureau of Philippine Standards as one of our partners or one of the conformity assessment bodies recognized by the Bureau of Philippine Standards to provide conformity assessment services or activities. So not only from PAB, we also recognize conformity assessment bodies accredited by other international accreditation bodies. We were in conformity assessment bodies accredited by an accreditation body signatory to ILAC or APAC. So because our Philippine accreditation body is signatory to those cooperations or agreement, we respect and honor the agreement entered into by our Philippine accreditation body. So that is the reason why in my earlier presentation, we have recognized 26 foreign testing laboratories. So those testing laboratories can conduct or may conduct product testing. They can send the test reports, and the same shall be evaluated and accepted by the Bureau of Philippine Standards for purposes of our conformity assessment or product certification schemes.
Okay, thank you, Sir Neil. There's a comment here, no? It's just a suggestion. This is from Marimel Dancel Porciuncula from FB page post. If I may suggest, the Coordinating Council may be called NQI, Coordinating Council, to avoid the use of the word national twice. So it's just a suggestion. So I proceed now with the next question. This one is from the Zoom chat box coming from DTI BPS's Mr. Willie Rivera. I think Mr. Ruiz can answer this one. The Consumer Act of the Philippines states that all instruments for determining weights and measures in all consumer and consumer-related transactions shall be tested, calibrated, and sealed every 6 months by the official sealer, who shall be the provincial or city or municipal treasurer or his authorized representative, and that all instruments of weights and measures shall continuously be inspected for compliance with the provisions in the Philippines version of the NQI, who will be responsible in ensuring that the LGUs are equipped and capacitated to do the stated functions. Engineer Ruiz, please.
Yes, thank you, Engineer Rivera, for your question. The Metrology Act of 2003.
I think there is I think there's somebody who is unmuted. Paki-mute muna. Okay, thank you. Please proceed, Engineer Ruiz.
Yes, so to answer the question, the Metrology Act of 2003 echoes the provisions of the Consumer Act with respect to calibration of instruments that are used for trade to be calibrated by the LGUs. The LGUs now, after several awareness campaigns that were initiated by the National Metrology Laboratory and also by the DTI, are slowly realizing and taking up this calibration role and function. That is why, for example, the National Metrology Laboratory is now in the process of negotiating an MOU with the City of Manila for their CBKT activities to support their calibration work and regulatory functions and mandates.
Okay. Thank you, Sir Manny, Sir Luis. We now proceed with the next question. This one is addressed, I think, to okay. This is for Mr. Abanto to answer. Okay, an anonymous sender of the question from FB. What is the role of the Development Academy of the Philippines in the NQI?
Well, essentially, we are trying to help strengthen the institutional capabilities. Relatedly, we have been providing assistance to some agencies to align to relevant international standards. And some of them already got accredited by PAB. And we are also making some reviews of the institutional framework because based on our series of review of regulations affecting certain industries, we highly recognize the importance of trying to decouple developmental functions with regulatory functions, as this is a very important issue as it affects in relation to the conflict of interest issues. We have several cases of that. As you may be aware of, agencies, some agencies tend to generate revenue from the delivery of regulatory services to help fund or pursue their developmental roles. So in those situations, we notice a lot of issues related to conflict of interest. So we are doing these reviews to help find out gaps that may affect overall national productivity. As you are fully aware that the cost of regulations, if these are unnecessary, it adds to the operating costs of the companies that makes them less competitive. So just imagine so many regulations being implemented, not to mention subnational level. And if you are moving or putting branches from one location to another, you're subjected to different but similar regulations. So this all adds to the costs of compliance of our regulated entities. And we are helping generate awareness on this to really improve the institutional framework and also help facilitate the flow of information across agencies. So that's it. That's from the development perspective that we are pushing for certain agenda of the Philippine
Okay. Thank you, sir. Just curious, can we have also your insights on the suggestion of Engineer Bato earlier about these two other pillars to have the respective Republic Acts? And with the pending executive order that you're preparing, that DAP is preparing, how would this really affect, although it's just a suggestion, but based on Mr. Empeño, they're looking into it already, and they will be looking into it already. Can
Yeah,
we
that's a
have
very
your insights also?
Yeah. It's a very important point raised to consider, because if you recall in my presentation, we took note of that observation that for an effectively functioning NQI, the bodies performing such functions are maybe better positioned if they are working independently but effectively coordinated. So if we can have a separate law or legal basis for them to operate, but anchored on the overall policy framework of the NQI, that will be a preferred scenario. Instead of, it's very difficult to have one legal basis for all of this, covering many aspects of the NQI. So if we can position these bodies to be independent from each other, but effectively coordinated at a certain level, whereby mechanisms to facilitate the flow of information is supported, and we work towards decoupling of regulatory functions with developmental functions. I think it will help strengthen the NQI.
Yeah. Okay. Sir, I agree also with you. No? I like the mention of independently operating yet effectively coordinated. Okay, so that's a very good insight coming from Mr. Abanto. Thank you, sir. So I think, do we still have time for another question? Okay, so meron akong signal. We can still entertain one more, I think. This one is coming, it was already responded to by Engineer Ruiz. There was a question from this Zoom chat box that asked about the NML's capability and calibration, measurement, and standards for gases. Specifically, I refer to the needs and requirements of our Malampaya natural gas. Will NML services be ready to handle the many related requirements of the liquefied natural gas, which will soon be available in the country? Okay, this was responded to by Engineer Ruiz already. So, share ko na rin lang yung sagot niya. At present, wait, I'll open my chat box. Okay.
Ako na lang, Dr. Ada.
Sige. Okay, para naman magsalita ka din, no? Okay.
So in answer
Sige, go ahead.
In answer to DOE's question, unfortunately,
Yes,
at present, our capability is only for volume and flow measurement of liquid products like water and petroleum. However, we would be interested in coordinating and working with DOE to develop any future measurement, calibration capability, and systems for LNG. So thank you, DOE.
Okay, at least we heard your response to the question. Okay, I think we'll just be asking one question now. We will be asking the response to the question from Ms. Rose Bella Malo, and I think this will be addressed by Engineer Bator. How do we become a member of the PhilMSTQE? Okay, may interested na po, ma'am.
Yeah, actually, we just had our General Assembly, and
Okay.
we can provide you with the form for you to apply for membership.
Okay.
It's easy. It's easy.
Hindi pala naisama ni ma'am
Everybody's
sa
welcome
presentation.
because we
isama niyo sa presentation niyo kanina.
We actually need workers. We're saying that the harvest is plenty, but the laborers are few. Most of us are volunteers there. We do not get anything from there, but we need more volunteers in PhilMSTQ.
Yeah, I think even our former director and former chief of our STD is part of the PhilMSTQ. In fact, they raised two questions here earlier.
We have Director Nuna and
Hermie Bion. Okay, so that ends our Q&A portion, and I would like to thank our distinguished speakers for sharing with us their knowledge and providing our participants today significant information that they can also share or bring with them in their respective organizations. Once again, maraming salamat po sa inyong lahat. And back to you, Ms. Rose and Sir Michael.
All right, so thank you, Doc Da. So that concludes our Q&A. So, but don't leave just yet. So to formally close our session today, may we have again the Director of the Philippine Accreditation Bureau, Mr. James E. Empeño, for the closing remarks. Sir?
Thank you very much, Rose and Michael, for being our MC for this activity. Thank you very much also, Dr. Da, for facilitating our open forum. So on behalf of the Philippine Accreditation Bureau, I would like to congratulate the Department of Science and Technology for organizing an event about the national quality infrastructure through the Industrial Technology Development Institute. Aside from the OST, we would like to commend our colleagues from the Bureau of Philippine Standards, Development Academy of the Philippines, and the Philippine Metrology, Standards, Testing, and Quality for sharing their initiatives in promoting the establishment of the national quality infrastructure of our country. Special thanks to Mr. 𝐐𝐮𝐿𝐿, our main speaker for today's activity, who joined us all the way from Brussels, Belgium. We would like to extend our sincere gratitude, Sir John, are you still there? For the very informative and very important presentation on NQI. Of course, we will never forget the support of our PAB Council members, who unanimously agreed the need to carry out this activity to cultivate greater appreciation about the concept of NQI. To the representatives of the Department of Trade and Industry, Department of Science and Technology, Department of Health, Department of Agriculture, Department of Environment and Natural Resources, Department of Public Works and Highways, Department of Energy, Department of National Defense, the Association of Structural Engineers, or ASEP, other government agencies, and private organizations, thank you for your unwavering support. We hope that through this webinar, we were able to gather all concerned agencies to create a common and more unified understanding of the NQI. May this event be a catalyst that would allow all of us to push for a more robust quality infrastructure and eventually push for a law that would strengthen this goal. Thank you and congratulations.
Okay, so thank you so much, Mr. James Empeño. Before we give the link to our evaluation form, so may I request everyone on Zoom to open their cameras for our photo opportunity with each other, together with our speakers and our DOST officials, DTI officials, DAP officials. All right, so our technical crew will be getting your photo. Okay, so please stay on your seats and wear your best smile for 10 seconds. So I will be counting po. So tech crew, please do the screenshots. Okay, so screenshot for our first page. So I think we have 2 pages or 3. All right. Okay po. So first po. Okay, so 3, 2, 1, smile. Okay.
Si Asek Dayan, wala yung camera.
Another po. Please stay on your cameras. 3, 2, 1. Smile. Okay. So next po. All right, 3, 2, 1. Smile. Okay. So next page, page 4. Okay, so smile po. 3, 2, 1. Okay, so last po. Okay, so 3, 2, 1. Okay, so thank you po for opening all your cameras. So all right, for our participants, don't leave just yet. So of course, we would like to know your comments and feedback regarding this webinar. So we'll be providing a certificate of participation to those who will accomplish the form until 6 p.m. today.
Your comments and feedback are valuable to us. Kindly accomplish this form using the link shown or scan the QR code for easy access. The link is also posted on the chat box by our chat moderator.
All right, so in behalf of the whole ITDI community, we would like to thank all the speakers we had today. So our DOST officials and other officials from other agencies from DTI, DAP, and FMSTQ. And to all of you who participated today. So this would not be possible without you all. Again, this is Rose Bonto.
And this is Michael Solis. Have a good day and stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, speakers.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, ITDI.
Everyone.
Thank you, ASEC.
Tumitilaok na ang manok, hudyat na ng pagpasok. Paglilingkod na walang kapalit, sa bayan ng aming hatid. Tara na, kaibigan, huwag kang magpaiwan. Gamitin ang dunong bansa'y susulong. Ating abutin ang pangarap ni Juan sa pamamagitan ng agham. Ang kaunlaran ay makakamtan kung lahat magtutulungan. Tara na, sama-sama itaguyod ang siyensya. Maayos na bukas para sa Pilipinas.
Anumang hamon ay haharapin, mahirap man ay kakayanin. Sa pinagsamang lakas at galing, tagumpay ay mararating. Tara na, kaibigan, huwag kang magpaiwan. Gamitin ang dunong bansa'y susulong. Ating abutin ang pangarap ni Juan sa pamamagitan ng agham. Ang kaunlaran ay makakamtan kung lahat magtutulungan. Tara na, sama-sama itaguyod ang siyensya. Maayos na bukas para sa Pilipinas. Ating abutin ang pangarap ni Juan sa pamamagitan ng agham. Ang kaunlaran ay makakamtan kung lahat magtutulungan. Tara na, sama-sama itaguyod ang siyensya. Maayos na bukas para sa Pilipinas.
Ang pangarap ko ay maging piloto.
Pangarap kong magkaroon ng chief alternative for personal hygiene.
Pangarap kong magkaroon ng mabilis at murang transportasyon para sa lahat.
Pangarap kong masagot ang malnutrition.
Pangarap ko pong magkaroon ng effective communication means for emergency.
Pangarap kong ma-maximize yung renewable energy source and to reduce the carbon dioxide emission.
Pangarap ko pong maging scientist.
Ngayon na o simulan na, humanda sabay-sabay akyat. Maghawak kamay, tayo'y aangat, lilipad. Ating abutin ang pangarap ni Juan sa pamamagitan ng agham. Ang kaunlaran ay makakamtan kung lahat magtutulungan. Tara na, sama-sama itaguyod ang siyensya. Maayos na bukas para sa Pilipinas. Ating abutin ang pangarap ni Juan sa pamamagitan ng agham. Ang kaunlaran ay makakamtan kung lahat pagtulungan. Tara na, sama-sama itaguyod ang siyensya. Maayos na bukas para sa Pilipinas. Maayos na bukas para sa Pilipinas. Maayos na bukas ating iparanas sa bayang Pilipinas. Ating abutin ang pangarap ni Juan.